Okay. I think I should hear you now.
Okay.
Oh, I hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I do.
Okay,
Welcome.
cool. All righty, cool. Hi.
Hi.
Okay. All righty. Yeah, I'm just going to switch off my radio. Hold on a moment.
Okay.
Okay, I'll give you just a wee bit of background here, and when other people join, there may be, you need to talk to others as well. So, just let me know when, my single person session comes to an end.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
No.
Okay. I am no. Okay. It's a complex story, but I'm not married. I got divorced many years ago. The person I got divorced from is my ex-husband. He passed away in November 2015. Mine says my internet connection is unstable. Can you hear me clearly?
I still hear you right now. Yeah.
Okay, all righty. And, I have over the years, I'm 62 now. I got married, I think, when I was 29. I think we were together for about just on 20 years, about 18. I have 2 daughters. The one is 30 and the other one 34. So, yeah, it was a long, drawn-out divorce. It was never really finalized. That's another complication on its own. Yeah.
Right.
However, that's not too much of a problem for me. The problem for me is that the immediate problem is that my daughters, whom I had a good relationship with, or I always thought I did, since their father's passing, they have become antagonistic towards me. And it feels as though they are almost like in the same kind of abusive process towards me, with the result that I have decided to just kind of cut them out, because if I don't talk to them, then I won't be a recipient of any
Right.
disregard or disrespect. Yeah.
Right.
What is quite interesting for me is that I'm pretty strong, and I think I'm assertive in many ways. However, in my personal relationship with my ex-husband, I went and did like assertiveness training courses and read a lot on it, because I just thought that I wasn't assertive enough in that area of my life. Other areas of my life, I'm fine. I have no problem. I have a good social circle with my families, like in my immediate family, though I'm not the oldest person in the family, like in terms of the siblings. I'm kind of perceived to be the leader in the family, or the matriarch at this stage of our life. Yeah.
Right.
And even in my work environment, I have no problem objecting or being principled and raising my opinion. It was only in my personal space that I felt always uncomfortable. Yeah. So to this end, I thought, okay, maybe I should work on myself, which I tried to do, but I never actually managed. And interestingly enough, only after my now ex-husband's passing, I kind of came across an article on narcissism. Yeah.
Right.
And despite having been in therapy and counseling and so on over a period of time, not often, it was just when I thought I need some help, then I would go and see a therapist. And I don't know about in your country, but in certainly in my country, in South Africa, when we talk about narcissism, we don't perceive it to be a mental disorder, really. Yeah. We almost perceive it to be just somebody who is just kind of egotistical and they kind of into themselves. Yeah.
Right.
And I thought that was exactly what he was. Oh, he's just into himself. It was further exacerbated, I think, by the fact that I was I think I'm smarter than he is. I'm a professional. He wasn't. He started a business. I assisted him with his business. You know, whenever I had to make any kind of advances in my career, you know, he would throw something, you know, in my way, because, you know, I was just coming from the position that I had to protect my kids. I had to protect the family unit, you know, and it's energy consuming. So
Right.
you're not driven in terms of your career, you know, and so on, because it's, you know, you just want all your energies go into like holding this family together. Yeah.
Right.
And so a whole lot of things happened in terms of, you know, how he took money from me and he stole money and he defrauded me, and, you know, and all of those things, yeah, which is another matter altogether. But I am now, I am almost still seeking, although he had passed, I'm still seeking kind of healing for myself, because I didn't recognize what the problem was. And though I didn't particularly blame myself, because I knew that, you know, I was doing the best that I could. And by the time I said, time out, I meant it. It's time out. I'm done with this now. And then there was this blog that I read, in fact, about, you know, being married to a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
And then following on that, there was the other one, like how to divorce a narcissist. And I mean, this thing went on for almost 20 years and it was never concluded. Yeah.
Right.
And even when he was ill, you must admit, I only discovered, you know, the totality of what I was going through after his passing.
Right.
So even when he was diagnosed with cancer, and within 3 months, you know, he passed. And I never had any communication with him. And in fact, I think, though I didn't know what the mental disorder required in terms of how one should respond to it, at a deep level, I knew how to respond. Right. And I responded accordingly. Yeah. I see Candace with us as well now. You want to maybe just acknowledge her presence, and then, yeah, we can chat again?
Oh, it's okay. You can keep going. Everybody knows when they come in and they'll start to type questions and stuff.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And so, you know, when I read the blogs, I noticed that I was actually doing the right things, in that when we separated, I cut all contact. I had no contact. Whatever I needed to communicate, I would do through attorneys and through the courts, which failed me hopelessly. But I also knew that approaching him directly wasn't going to help either. And so, though financially it was, you know, such a burden for me, I decided that it's better for me to have that financial burden rather than to have the frustration,
right,
the emotion of trying to deal with this, trying to be logical, and I'm dealing with somebody who's not rational. Yeah,
completely irrational.
Yeah, and then I read this blog about how to divorce a narcissist, and it's exactly what he was doing. I mean, he was just throwing spanners in the works all the time. I mean, how does a divorce matter span over a period of almost 20 years, you know? And when he was ill in hospital and he was like kind of on his deathbed, I said to my daughters, I said, look, I'll come and see him. I mean, clearly he couldn't see me, yeah?
Right.
And they said that they would ask, and I said, no, I'll ask one of my friends who's also a friend of his. So we have, you know, mutual friends. I said, I'll ask them, you know, them being adults. I thought it would be better for the adults to ask rather than for the kids to ask.
Right.
And then I asked them, you know, if they would approach. Well, I asked my girlfriend, and she then asked her husband to go to the hospital with her, and both of them spoke with him, you know, about just allowing me to come and see him. And, you know, just the opportunity to, because for me it was, I could show my my daughters, I could be more supportive towards them if I were to be present when they go and see him. And in fact, I was going to the hospital, and he knew that I would be there because I would take them, because I didn't want them to be there on their own. And if they had to see a doctor, you know, I would be there on their day when they see a doctor, so that they could share the pain and the news with me. So he knew that, you know, and they were living with me. They actually don't live in my city, but they had come, you know, because he was ill. And they were living, so he knew that thing. And he refused, to see me. And then, you know, he passed on without, you know, having seen me. And I said, well, I gave him an opportunity. It wasn't my opportunity. It was his opportunity,
Right.
I didn't treat him badly. He treated me badly, So I was giving him an opportunity,
Yeah, to clear his conscience before he went on. But he didn't really want that.
No. And and so now, you know, I'm this is why I'm chatting to you now, because I am now in the process of, I almost feel as though he had never released me, you know, over the years. Even during the divorce, he always wanted me to be fighting with him. It's like a naughty child, you know, an attention-seeking child who, it doesn't matter if I get negative attention, but, you know, as long as I get the attention,
Yeah.
And so, I always thought, you know, you're just, you know, doing this to get the attention. But I'm managing, you know, financially, and I'm managing my life without you. And he had another person, another partner in his life, and they had a terrible relationship with each other. In fact, it was very toxic. She had committed suicide twice. And I said, you know, my comment when I heard that was, that could have been me.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, his son, who was also living with him, committed suicide. His son was about 24, thereabout. And at the time, she couldn't attend her son's funeral because she was in hospital recuperating from a failed suicide attempt. Yeah,
that's the thing, is this abuse is crazy making. You know, you got out before it drove you crazy, but the longer you stay in, the more you start to doubt yourself and doubt your reality, and you could totally lose control of what's real in your life.
Yeah. And so now, so, you know, in addition to trying to heal myself from that experience, because, you know, I was always barking up the wrong tree. I always thought, oh, he's just insecure because of, you know, not that I flaunt who I am, but, you know, I do have a bit more prestige than he does, or did have. So I thought, oh, you know, that's it. But when I realized, actually, it's not that. It's like taking the wrong medication when you're ill.
Right.
And so I feel that I have to start healing myself from what the true position was. Yeah. So.
Right. Because until you realize, like your analogy there, right? You're taking the wrong medication. Like until you realize what illness you have, you're not treating it in the right way, right? Or if you're just going after the symptoms, but not the core cause, if you don't know what the core cause is, then how do you heal it, right? So it sounds like what you're saying is now you want to go straight to that cause, like that core issue. What is it that you need to heal deep inside now that you know that was narcissistic abuse? You know, and it's amazing too. Like a lot of people say this, and I found myself sometimes doing this where, like you said, your intuition, you know, sometimes was telling you how to deal with this person and telling you, you know, how to deal with the situation. And it's funny how sometimes we almost intuitively know that, you know, and so we can respond that way. And then later we read later, oh, wow, that's actually like one of the tactics to dealing with narcissistic abuse.
Yeah, absolutely. So Meredith, thank you. I'll just sit in while you perhaps dealing with some other folks. I don't know how the program works, so if you want to maybe just respond to some other people, and then and I'll just sit in for a while. Yeah.
Okay.
But thank you for all the same. Yeah. So
Sure.
yeah.
If there's something in particular that I can help you with too, please let me know. I'm gonna mute your microphone now in case anybody else is coming in to ask a question. Maybe Candy has a question that she wants to ask. And
Yes.
if there's something in particular I can help you with, like let me know in the chat and I'll unmute you again if you want to say it out loud.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. Oops. Okay. It's okay. Okay. So Candy just said, it's okay. Please use the time. So Marianne, how can I help you? Is there anything in particular that, you're trying to understand right now as you're talking about trying to get to that core issue and anything around that?
I don't even know, because I don't know where to start and I don't know how to go to that place. And maybe it's just the kind of place that I don't want to go to right now. Yeah.
Right.
But then the other issue that I have at the moment is with my daughters, my two daughters, I have just decided that, I just felt that they were disrespectful towards me. And his family has also been disrespectful towards me. And the way I would normally deal with things like that is, well, with my kids, I would normally just tell them straight off, but I think since I'm in such, well, also I'm kind of considering them, because when I was talking to them initially, they would say, oh, you told us that you buried daddy 20 years ago and you're not grieving, which I did. I said to them, I buried your father 20 years ago. I shed the tears. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I make no apologies for that. And I didn't want them to think that I was supporting them. Yes. Yeah. And there's no question about, and they're not questioning that at all. Yeah. However, like for example, I told you that the divorce was never finalized, and I asked him, I said, can I please have the documents, because they don't belong to anybody but the two of us, and it's not open for public scrutiny. Yeah, so I'd like to get it from you guys, if you can go to your father's house and bring me the documents. And then, they always had an excuse. Oh, we're grieving. Oh, we must go and sort out the place. And, I said, I'll go there with you. You don't have to. I'll know where and how to find, though I had never been to his house before. I said, but you know your partner almost better than they know themselves. So you kind of know, okay, that's their filing system. Yeah. And that's how it, and I knew what I was looking for. I also said, look, it won't be a file standing around here, there, and so on. I have 2 crates of like filled with documents. You should have at least 1 crate. So I'll go there and I will look for what it is that I need to have. And there was always an excuse about, like, oh, they're still grieving and, they're not feeling, and he had left his house, Yusufra, to the 3 of us, myself and my 2 daughters. And I don't know for what reason, because I have no interest in the house. And eventually, I had a meeting with my one daughter, with my younger daughter. And I said to her, you know what? I feel like I'm going through a divorce now again, because I've been asking you folks for documents which rightfully belong to me. They don't belong to you. Because it's about me and it's about your father, and he is no longer. So I need to get that stuff back. And she kind of apologized. And anyway, I got the keys to go to the house, and I went and I retrieved my stuff. And after I got the documents, it was in a crate, and it was right there, like in a storeroom in front of you. You kind of had to either step over it or like kind of walk around it, So you had to negotiate the script that was standing there. So I don't know how they could not know that this is what I was after. Yeah. Anyway, I took the stuff. And then after that, because it was in the storeroom of the house, after that, they demanded the storeroom key from me. And anyway, long story short, I then gave the keys to them and I said, there are clearly some trust issues here. Because then they said, oh, they only wanted the storeroom key because, you know, their father's personal things are in there. And I said, there are clearly trust issues here. Here you are. You can have all the keys. That's it. Yeah. So, yeah, and they were having like meetings with the executor without my knowledge. So, you know, it was quite like painful for me, you know, that after everything that I had been through, you know, that I was treated like that, yeah, by them.
Right,
And
because he created that, you know, he planted ideas in their mind about you, you know, he probably foreshadowed, you know, this is, you know, okay, he knew he got sick, right? So he was probably telling them, like, when I die, your mom is going to try to do this, your mom is going to do that. Don't let her do this. You know, he could have planted all sorts of ideas in their minds. And, you know, it almost sounds like now both, or at least one of them is already carrying on some of those narcissistic patterns from their dad.
Yeah. No, indeed. Yeah. And yeah, so, you know, and the way I see it, I say, well, we were both successful, you know, in terms of our objective, in that his objective was to vilify me as much as he possibly could.
Right.
And my objective was to protect them from what was really happening. And so he was, you know, successful at, you know, what his objective was. And clearly I was successful at mine too. Yeah.
Have you ever had an open discussion with your daughters, like recently or way in the past, about any part of that?
No, I haven't, because, you know, I always felt that, you know, it's finished, it's over, you know, I don't have to have a conversation. And so this is recent, yeah. And so because they're still in this grieving process, I don't want to say anything to them
right now. Yeah.
Right now, you know. So I kind of think, okay, I'll give them time, you know. And then at some point, you know, I will let them know, even if I have to write it down.
Yeah.
My one daughter is married. The older one, the younger one is not married, and I have a good relationship with my son-in-law and with my other daughter's partner. I have a good relationship with them. I mean, I also had a good relationship with my daughters, for that matter. And I was thinking that at some point I will talk to my son-in-law, because somebody needs to know the story. Yeah.
Well, yeah, your daughters definitely need to know the story. Like right now, I totally understand what you're saying. It's not the right time. They're only 4, 5, 6 months in the grieving process, right? Probably they need several more months of that. But at some point, you need to find a way to have that conversation with them, because you know why? It's not just about you. Like that pattern is a generational pattern. The legacy of abuse goes on, and they don't know. Just like until you found that article about narcissistic abuse, you didn't know, right? And they probably went through some things in childhood that they haven't made sense of and that they've stuffed down, and they ought to know about what happened to you too, you know. But also for them, like now they're starting their families, they're starting their life, and they don't want to carry that forward. And until you have that dialogue with them, to open the dialogue and start to have the conversations, it's like still an unconscious pattern that will go on.
Yeah, I can see that in my older daughter. In fact, when her dad and I separated, she was 18 years old, and she had finished her schooling, and she went and lived with her dad. Yeah.
Right.
She came to my house once, and she told me that I don't know how to be an effing mother, you know. And
you don't know how to be what?
What, a fucking mother?
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, at 18. Yeah. And I just asked her to leave, and I said, please leave. Because the way I look at it is that, when there are issues on the table, my philosophy is that I don't want to add to the issues, because at some point we have to resolve them. So
Right.
if there are 5 issues on the table, let's leave it at 5. I'm not going to add to them, because then I'm going to give you a rod with which to beat me later on, say, oh,
Right.
but this is what you did and this is what you said, yeah?
Right.
So I try to avoid that, yeah?
That's very
And
wise.
I was going to apologize for that, but thank you for saying wise to do that. Because, it's kind of my escape route, yeah?
Right.
But yeah, and a few months later she came, and she then she came home, and I didn't even ask her to apologize or anything. She just kind of started coming home, a few nights a week, and and I just left it. It's fine, yeah. And then she moved back in with me, and then later she and a partner, because I have a flat as well. She asked me if she could live in the flat. And you call it an apartment, we call it a flat.
I know.
And I gave her, the right to use the apartment, and then a partner moved in with her, So, I've always, I had a good relationship with him.
Right.
And when she said, oh, Mom, you and I need to talk. And I said, oh, what about? So she said, no, about us. And I said, no, it's fine. We don't have anything to talk about. For me, it's like, I didn't want to dig up stuff. Oh, but you said, and I said, and you said, and then I said. And for me, it's, if I took you back, you just kind of came back to me. And for me, it was unconditional.
Right.
It wasn't, oh, we have to first sit down and work on some, like ground rules here or your boundaries. It wasn't like that. It was just, okay, yeah, cool, it's fine. And life just goes on. And she's the one, but she was always like her father's daughter, yeah?
Right.
From
The
when she
golden
was
child.
little. Like she would, her father's daughter. I remember, whenever her dad and I would have like some kind of, difference of opinion or this little argument or something, and then she'd say, Mommy, apologize to Daddy. From when she was really young, yeah.
Yeah.
And a few years ago, she said to me, oh, my father.
Marian, I can't hear you right now.
Is a narcissist, and she says he's a narcissist.
I'm sorry.
Hi, I seem to have lost you.
I got you now. You said something about your daughter.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Can I carry on now?
Sure.
Or are we lost?
I didn't hear the last several seconds of what you were saying.
She says, my dad is a narcissist, yeah? And I think she knew what it meant. And she knew that it was a mental disorder, though I didn't know it until now. And just, you see, she comes from a newer generation here, where I think they had been exposed in terms of their learning processes, yeah, more than I had in my learning processes, yeah. So, and there's more conversation about certain things, yeah. Are we still together?
Yeah, your voice cut out for a little while again, but it sounds like you're saying your daughter, you think she realized that your husband was a narcissist, that her father.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is the oldest daughter?
The older one, yeah. And then she also, she said while he was in hospital, she says to me, Mom, Daddy and I have the same, she didn't use the word devils, but she meant like devilish streaks. The two of them have the same, they cut from the same fabric.
Right.
Yeah.
She owns it. That's pretty wild.
Yeah. So, so she knows exactly.
Right.
In my mind, I think she knows exactly, and she portrays those characteristics as well. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I think with her, I'm not that disappointed, because it's almost like expected. Yeah.
You expected she would become the narcissist.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect it to behave like this, but it will not have surprised me.
Right.
But with my younger daughter, who lived with me, and she was very young at the time when her father left, and I really like nurtured her and did like everything. And I'm not saying that I want my kids to be eternally grateful to me. No, that's not it. Yeah. I want them to always respect me. So it's not about, I want you to be grateful. I want you to respect me because of, who I am and what I stand for. Yeah.
Right.
And that's not coming through. Yeah. So in terms of how to deal with them, I thought, okay, I'm in a vulnerable stage at the moment, outside of the family unit, with the immediate family, with their father's family. They are under the impression that the tension, because what also disappointed me is that probably my older daughter went and spoke to her father's family about the tension.
Right.
And I don't appreciate that. And then my sister-in-law sent me this really horrible letter with like all kinds of judgment and accusations, and, which I decided, you know what, I'm not even going to respond to it. Good. Because I don't owe you any explanations. Right. And if I were to respond, I would have to be kind of defensive, and I'm not the kind of person to go on the defensive. Yeah. So
right. Because this is that smear campaign, the flying monkeys and the smear campaign that they talk about. That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. Right. So I was upset about that. Yeah, and so it's almost because, of course, there's a will and there's an estate to be wound up and so on. And the impression now is that, because he hadn't paid me the settlement that he was supposed to pay me in terms of the divorce order, because he appealed it, but the appeal was more to drag out the matter. It wasn't really, and then we had it's a messy thing. But anyway, so the family, clearly they think that it's because of money, and money never came into the equation. It has nothing. The tension between my daughters and I actually has nothing to do with money. Yeah. Right.
It's about the sin. It's about the story as he told them.
It's about the disrespect, that they're showing.
That's why they're doing that, because of all the ideas that he planted in their head.
Yeah. So it's something that I need to deal with. But as I said, right now, I'm, it's, and when I thought about it afterwards, I thought, they've been completely disrespectful towards me, and not either one of them ever thanked me. Not that I wanted to be thanked, but they didn't thank me for the support that I lent them during their father's illness. And so you just think you're vilifying me, yet there was so much that I did. But what also happened was that I chose not to go to his funeral service, and I think that the family was embarrassed about that. Because I acted outside in our community, in my culture and community. people go to the funeral. That's like what you do.
Right.
So I acted outside of the norm. Yeah. And, most people can't deal with those of us who act outside of the norm. You're supposed to follow, the normal societal practices.
Right.
So I think my daughters and his family, they take issue because I didn't go to the funeral and I didn't show the hundreds of people who were there that that we had a cordial relationship, which we didn't.
Right.
And I didn't stay away for that. I just stayed away because when I wanted to go and see you in hospital, you didn't want to allow me in.
Right.
So why should I go to your funeral? Yeah.
And you have every right to have that boundary and to say, I don't want to go. Like, I don't want to go. And like you said too, you don't have to defend yourself to them because, like I was saying, this is a multi-generational problem, the legacy of abuse. Clearly his family has some of these patterns going on. What's important to them is what other people think more than how you feel and how you have the right not to go, because of what happened. And it sounds like, like you were saying, wait a period of time for your daughters to grieve, starting with the youngest daughter, maybe having one-on-one time with her and be able to talk to her first, because chances are if the older one became the golden child and most narcissistic, chances are he made the youngest one the scapegoat. And usually it's easier for the scapegoat to realize what happened before the golden child because they're treated differently. And what'll happen too now is, so now that the older one is taking on the narcissistic patterns, the younger one is trying to please her. So she's taking her side, so she's not listening to you. And like at some point, when you figure out how and when is the correct time, I would reach out to the youngest daughter first and see if you can have some deep heart connection with her and start to tell her some of your truth and explore a little bit about, how you don't want her, to continue into the future feeling like this. And maybe she went through something, and to feel open and able to talk to you about any of that. And that might be able to start opening the dialogue with her, so that you have a relationship again.
Yeah.
But I also think that you're right too, to set that boundary like you have recently and to cut off contact with them for right now, because those are toxic behaviors and you don't need to get involved in that. And when you feel like the time is right, and it feels safe, then you can try to open the door again to communication. But, it's so hard too, because they're your children. And I'm sure you just want to love on them. Like you just want them to be part of your life and love on them because they're your children. And it must be incredibly difficult to be treated like that and to not be appreciated at all for all the unconditional love that you offered and all of that generosity, that even after they rejected you and left, that you took them back and there was no questioning about that. Like your heart was wide open to them. And I'm sorry, that must be very difficult to understand, but you have so much love and believe in your love. And, maybe once, your youngest daughter gets through this grieving process, she'll be able to listen to you a little bit and to see some of her own story with her father in a different way.
Yeah. Thank you, Meredith. I'll just listen in now, or
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing
so
your
much.
story.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. So if you guys would like to speak on microphone, just type in the chat that you have something to say and I will unmute you. That way everybody in the background stays muted, because otherwise too much background noise will come. If you would like to type a question, you can feel free to do that too, to stay more anonymous. But if you don't mind your voice, if you do want to use your voice and ask a question, your voice will be on the recording. That's the only heads up I want to give you. I have a message here. It says, to be hypocrites like them. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that in real time. I'm not sure what that was in response to. Can you elaborate? It was when she was talking about social norms. Okay, like at the funeral. Right, to be hypocrites like them, exactly. Yeah, the hypocrisy, one of the key signs of the narcissist, right? And how, you know, to them it's much more important what other people think than what's real. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody have any questions? Like I said, feel free to either write them in the chat. You can even write it privately to me if you don't want anyone to know where it's coming from. If you would like to use your voice and speak, you're welcome to do that too. Let me know in the chat you'd like me to unmute you, or you can raise your hand and I'll go ahead and unmute you. I am realizing I am really more like a narc than I wanted to admit. I know about fleas. I am way codependent. I use people via helping others to feel good about me. I get mad when people don't listen to my ideas. I use people via helping others to feel good about me. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I keep my mad inside. Helping others. Okay. So you feel like maybe sometimes you help people with an ulterior motive, that if you help them, it makes you feel good about you. Is that what you're saying? That's not necessarily narcissistic, you know, because it does feel good to help other people, right? Like if you love people and you have empathy, it feels good because you see other people happy. Or are you saying, is it more about them needing you, but then it's about me? Is it all about you? Or is it partly about you? You know, is it like you're helping others because you want them to do something for you, like you do something for them and now they owe you a favor? That's narcissistic. You'll see that sometimes where somebody, you know, acts like they want to help you and maybe they do something and then they expect you to do something. But it sounds like what you're saying is something different. Like you feel good when you help other people, and that's not necessarily narcissistic. I did want for people to let me know if what I did helped. Well, yeah, but that's also feedback. It's an expectation. Okay, but you know, if your expectation is you don't know if it's helping or not, and you want to know if it helped or not, that's like asking for feedback. That was an expectation, and then they did not, and then I felt mad. Oh, okay. You felt mad if they didn't feel like what you did helped. Is that what you're saying? If Then then they said, "You're great, we love you," but wanted to know how it helped. I wanted to know how what I did helped. Okay. Now, is that like in terms of feedback, or are you saying like you get mad if people don't take your advice? Feedback. Feedback is one thing. Feedback is not, yeah, that's not a narcissistic thing. You know, it's a different thing if you feel like every opinion you have is right and you're the only right opinion and idea, and if people don't take your advice, then they're stupid and they're wrong and blah blah blah. That's narcissistic. But it sounds like what you're saying is you want to hear feedback, you know, and you want to help people. When you say you felt mad, what did you feel mad about? Like, I've been giving to people for months and even some for years. So it sounds like what you're saying is that you've been giving a lot to people and maybe they haven't been appreciative of it. Now I wanted to hear if I matter tangibly. So it sounds like what you're saying is like you've been helping people, and you wanted to know for real how you're helping them, what that meant to them, not just them saying, "We love you, you're awesome." Yes, for real impact. I don't think this sounds narcissistic. I think you might be helping narcissists who don't appreciate and have gratitude for you. And I know I've known some narcissists like this. They're like, "Oh my God, you're so amazing. and it's all flattery. It's not like, oh, I love you so much. You know, it's not real. Like it's not like a real connection. They're just saying it to like butter you up. But then did they have anything concrete? You know, like exactly, no, not really. It says, then I felt used, but these are victims of narcs that I've been helping. Well, okay, now it gets tricky. So they might have been victims of narcs. You also want to keep in mind that not every person who gets into a relationship with a narcissist is a codependent. Sometimes people who get involved in relationships with other narcissists are like borderline personality disorder. And sometimes they really act and seem like the victim. And the only way to really know is like that person is always, always the victim. And they use the victim card to get sympathy, and they use the victim card to get help, and they use the victim card to get other people's energy. And sometimes, you know, they're in one of these switch dynamic relationships, which is a very small percentage where, you know, one day this person is abusing and this person's receiving the abuse, and the other day they switch roles and now this person's abusing and this person is being the receptive of that, and it goes back and forth, and sometimes within the same hour or conversation. Number one. Number two is that, you know, the fact that you're questioning that you might be the narcissist is probably a sign that you're not a narcissist, because most narcissists are never going to question that. And also, something that you said earlier here, what was it? You're realizing that you're more like a narc. Okay, so what happens sometimes is when we're in relationships with narcissists, sometimes we get into these relationships for a long period of time, and in sort of like a self-defense, it's like you want to give them a taste of their own medicine, and you do something back to them that they did to you, or like you use the exact same phrase they used to hurt you to like flip it back on them to like see how they like it. And I've done that myself. And that's sort of like the point where you get to like that desperation, you know, where you're just trying to get them to realize what they are doing. And so, you know, you retaliate in this way. And also like toxicity, like the toxicity of other people in your life will bleed through every area of your life. And you could end up then accepting that toxicity from one person and needing to get it out, and then turning to like some really loving, generous person that you know is loving and generous, and just like throw it all out. That's another dynamic that you might want to be cautious of. Let me catch up here. Someone says, or maybe cerebral narc with somatic narc. Yeah, it's possible. Ooh, and I'm an empath, so it makes sense why I'm triggered to give and assist them. Also, I'm a weird empath. Like I can pick up on others' feelings and motives, but I can't feel their feelings. And I also can easily dump people and have no feeling after I feel used. So that's why I thought it was a narc. Oh no. When you can dump people and have no feeling after, that doesn't mean you're a narcissist. That means like you're done. Like you got to that point where it was like, oh, no way. Like I'm so over this. Like this is an absolute illusion. The whole relationship was an illusion. This person doesn't give a shit about me. I'm out of here. And you just shut it off. I've done that before. And that can be like a really easy way to get yourself out of there, you know, and to not let that emotional pool like keep sucking you back in there. That is not necessarily a narcissistic tendency, also because you are an empath. So that means that like, you know, you feel very strongly. And so you may have learned even from very young that that's a defense mechanism, that like when this person, you know, is hurting you too much and it's time to cut off, it's time to cut off. And you just shut it right off. Like as much as you can turn it on and feel everything, you can also turn that thing right off. It's like a radio dial, you know, and that's the thing. Yes, I'm sorry, I missed a few messages here. Yes, that's my done mode. It's my awareness to the veil coming down, me seeing that the relationship is corrupt, not just them, but also my investment in it. Yeah, totally. Oh, sorry, Marianne, didn't see you leave. Let me catch up here. Sorry. Oh yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I would not be questioning yourself in that way. Like I said, there's several different dynamics that can go on. in a relationship, and why, you know, the codependent, the empath might think that they're a narcissist, you know, one being that that toxicity bled so much through your life and you didn't know how to deal with it, and you had all this heavy negative toxic energy and you didn't find any healthy way to discharge it, and so you turned to the next nearest kind healthy person, you just like vomited it all on that person, or you did something to hurt them but like that wasn't really you, you know, so later you were like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I'm so embarrassed, I didn't mean to do that to you, like this is what was happening and I did not handle that well, and I should have gone and exercised, I should have gone and meditated, I should have gone and discharged that energy in a very different way and not brought it to you. That's one thing that can happen sometimes because it's just too much, and maybe you didn't deal with it. And you know, and so don't doubt yourself because of that, and also don't doubt yourself and how you cut off from people once it's too much, because like, yeah, once you get it and once you're like, oh hell no, I'm done with that, you know, yeah, just it turns right off sometimes. You know, some people can do that, not everyone has that kill switch, you know, but that's probably a self-defense mechanism that you learned early on. I do the same thing. People have said that to me, like, well, you're just so cold now. Yeah, it's over. Like I gave you all this time. I gave you all this opportunity and you couldn't give me respect. You couldn't love me. You had to abuse me. So I'm done. There's no more. I don't have to just like keep taking it at this point. So you don't have to feel guilty about that. That's sort of like a final boundary. Like maybe you set boundaries and set boundaries and set boundaries and the person wasn't listening. So you set a final boundary, which is shut it all off. That's okay. As a codependent, I think my growth here is to help others less, help myself first. And I have to accept that I'm a good person and not a bitch because I can cut off when needed. I definitely give people chances. My NM, is that narcissistic mother, was a bitch. I don't want to be like her. Yeah. You know, growing up in that, I would see myself like in my 20s, and I would see myself in a social situation feeling really awkward because of how I grew up. And then I would see myself saying something to someone just like my mother would say to me, or something she would say in a social situation. And then like afterward just being like, oh my God, why did I do that? Like, why would I do that? Because you grew up with that, you know, and it was programmed in you. And so like, you got to work to overcome that. Right. And like those voices that you still hear in your head, like, you know, whatever your mom was obsessed about, maybe it was cleaning, you know? And so maybe like as an adult, you know, you're nearly 40 years old. And like, as you're cleaning your house, like you still hear the words of your mom, like, did you get that corner? You know, I still see dust in that corner. And maybe you're like berating yourself. And then you don't realize that you accidentally then nitpick and criticize someone else because it was comfortable or what you were used to from the past. And it was like, oh man, I don't want to be like that, you know? And so having that awakening and realizing like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to treat people like that. I don't want to sound like that. I don't want to have the effect on people that she had on me. That's not a narcissist. No, that's a person who is aware, self-responsible and aware. It doesn't mean you're perfect. It means you made a mistake, right? You know, you projected that onto someone else, something that you learned, but you realized, oh, wow, I don't want to treat people like that. I don't want to hurt people like that. I don't want people to feel like the way I felt. So I'm going to stop that behavior. So my new message to myself is that, yeah, she was a bitch because she cut off to injure. She didn't give people a chance. I'm cutting off because of self-respect. I'm nothing like her. I can see that now. Right. And this is the difference between the silent treatment and no contact. So it's funny that no contact is the remedy to get away from the narcissist. The only way to win is no contact. It's not to have any contact. That is the ideal situation. And it's so funny because the narcissist will turn that back on you and be like, oh, you're just being, you know, mean and a bitch for not listening to me, because that's what they do. They use the silent treatment as a form of punishment, you know, and so when you do that, when you cut off contact, then, you know, they see their own projection in you. And you're right, it's not the same thing. That you have given all this time and energy and love up until that breaking point where you decided not to give anymore. You decided to draw that boundary and that limit for your well-being. and that's a good thing. And, I always tell people too, when you set boundaries with toxic people, they will always make you feel bad. They will always make you feel ashamed for setting that boundary. They'll humiliate you for having that boundary. They'll call you a bitch. They'll call you, whatever they want to say for having that boundary. And they'll make you feel guilty, and they'll push and push to see if they can get you to go, well, okay, and then give it up, and then what? Then you're right back in the same thing again. So, as soon as you set that boundary, you know very well how toxic that person is, and you got to hold that boundary and know yourself and know that you have every right to cut a person off when they're not treating you right. Someone said, good for you. Yeah, good job. Because you realize that it doesn't mean you're like her. This is how you have to deal with it. Cutting off, you've had enough. You're done with that. You're done being abused, and you gave people chances, and you probably kept turning your cheek over and over again, and at a certain point, you just got to cut that off and be like, that's it. Their intent is key to what makes them a narc. Our intent is totally different, even if the outer behavior is the same, right? That's the silent treatment and the no contact, right? And that's true, because their intent is to punish you, it's to hurt you, it's to get you to feel like you're bad and you're a problem, and they still want something from you. They're still trying to get something from you. Whereas no contact is just, there's nothing there. It's not a manipulation. You don't want anything. You just want it cut off for good. And stop that madness, right? So yeah, trust in yourself, trust in your boundaries, trust in your right, and know that you have the right to have those boundaries, and you have the right to cut off that emotion when you're done. You don't owe anyone an explanation for that. Enough is enough. We have gone through enough shit. Exactly. You got to own your boundaries. You got to own your right to have boundaries. And that's something that if you were brought up in a household where you weren't allowed to have boundaries, or you were punished for having boundaries, then as an adult, it's even harder, because you got the childhood guilt on top of you, and then whatever guilt is coming through the relationship now. And that's what you really got to practice on is owning it and saying, no, this is my boundary, and that's okay. This is a healthy boundary. It's a reasonable boundary. I'm going to express this to you in a very healthy and reasonable way. And if you choose to ignore it, to abuse it, to violate it, we're done. We're done, because this boundary is what protects me and what I value. And it lets me know what I'm responsible for and what I'm not responsible for, because everything beyond that is all your shit, right? I'm not taking your shit. I'm not taking your heavy feelings. I'm not taking your need to feel like you can bombard me however you want. No, this is the boundary, and I own everything in here. I own how I feel. And if I don't feel good about something you're doing, I'm going to set a new boundary to protect myself. And you just got to own that. You got to own your right to have that, and to not let anybody do that to you, to not let anybody bully you, and to not having, your boundary. And you were saying, you think that your growth right now is to help yourself, more than other people. And the thing is, the majority of humanity really needs to practice thinking about other people. It's most people are more self-absorbed. The audience that I'm speaking to, you guys, we all need to work more on ourselves and being there for ourselves, the self-nurturing, the self-care, right? And that's what we're here for, because if you don't take care of that, then you'll always be a martyr. Other people will always be taking advantage of you. And there really has to be a balance in life of the selfless and the selfish. And you can't be one and not the other, because if you're totally selfless in life, then you are the martyr. You're just giving to everyone at the expense of yourself. And if you're totally selfish, then you're a total narcissist. You don't give a shit about anybody else, right? And all you care about is you and taking care of you. So somewhere in there is balance, and the healing path, if you have been so far on this end of the continuum, in Buddhism, they talk about the middle path, but the middle path isn't just straight down the middle. It's you've been at one extreme. Sometimes you kind of need to go back to the other extreme to figure out where the middle is. Because how do you know where the middle is if all you know is the extreme, is one extreme? So, the self-healing process being a lot about you. And it doesn't mean being rude to people or anything like that, but meaning like you realize like you need to spend a lot more of your inner resources on taking care of you, on being there for you, on self-nurturing, on self-care, on self-love, on doing things that make you happy, spending alone time, you know. And sure, some people might think that that's selfish, but people who think that probably aren't healthy friends, because your healthy friends are going to go, yeah, girl or guy, sorry, I don't know who's talking there. I feel you, like, you know, you got to take care of you. And I totally get that you need some alone time. So, you know how to reach me. And when you want to reach me, I'm here. Let's hang out. But I totally get that. You know, that's a healthy friend. Yes, we have a whole other thing to grow and compared to the majority of people. And I've got to balance out. I can afford to be more self-focused, investing in me versus volunteering, giving my time away, putting my focus on others' wellness, right? And you know, if you're totally drained and exhausted, that's how you know you've been giving entirely too much to other people, and yeah, drained, and not taking enough care of you, right? When you've got energy abounded, then you probably have a pretty good balance, you know. But as long as you're feeling drained and stuff, you know, that's probably your body just telling you, okay, let's take care of me now. Let's take care of me. And you're going to have to override all the old programming that says this is selfish. You can't do that. You got to give to other people. You got to always be doing that. And like I said, you know, again, this message is not for the vast majority of the world. This is for my particular audience of people who have spent entirely too much energy pleasing and helping and fixing and doing for others. And you got to be there first for you. So when I asked for just feedback, I thought, geez, that's hardly asking for anything. And you people can't even give me that. Yeah, because they don't have anything specific. I got confused with a past lover like this. He would always be like, you're so amazing. You're so brilliant. I just love listening to you talk. But it was nothing real. And it wasn't like there was something real that he, and that's why I thought he was into me, but he wasn't. He was just like fluffing me up with flattery that was just like superficial flattery. It wasn't based on anything real. It wasn't an actual compliment. A compliment is like, you know, something specific, like, you know how you do that and you do this in life. And, you know, it was in this instance that I noticed it in that instance, and that thing that happened, like this quality inside you really comes out, and you have this effect on people, that this quality you have, that's a specific thing. That's someone who genuinely notices something in you. Someone who's just flattering the superficiality of things, like, you're so amazing kind of thing. That person is not, that person's not really grateful or appreciative of what you're doing. And it doesn't mean that you can't say the word, oh my God, you're so amazing, because you might really mean that. But people who only have that to say, and they're not giving you anything real, that's a clue there for you. And yeah, asking for feedback was not a big thing. It wasn't like you were asking for a lot and they couldn't give it because they didn't have anything specific. You get it. That's exactly what I wanted. That understanding helps me feel so not so alone. Yeah, you're not alone. And we all felt like that, and sometimes do feel like that. And you're not. And, you know, don't let those old words, because you're probably still hearing some of that in your inner dialogue. When that comes up, you want to find whatever you can do to override that, something that reassures yourself. Like, and I don't know what specific things are coming up for you. If you want to share that, like the thoughts, okay, I'm a bother and no one gets me. Okay, good. So, okay. What you want to do is override that. So as this comes up, however, if it comes up in that exact phrase, or if you hear other people expressing this to you, every time it comes up in any way, shape, or form, you feel like you're only accepted if you're useful. Okay. So you feel like you have to be useful in order to be not a bother kind of thing. So, and nobody gets you because nobody really appreciates you, is what you're saying, because you've been surrounded by a lot of these toxic people who didn't appreciate you. It's not that no one gets you, right? And so you want to change this up and get real with yourself. So it's not that no one gets you. There are people that get you. Like every person listening to this right now is probably like, I totally get you, right? So it's not that. It's just that you've been hanging around the wrong people, right? Who didn't get you. No one knows me either, since I'm always hiding my needs behind serving others, right? there's that, and there's probably a degree of them not trying to get to know you, you know, if they're a toxic person, that sort of thing. So you want to tell yourself that you're not a bother, that you have so much to offer. You know, yeah, no one asks about you. That's true. No one asks about me. Of course they don't, because they're only caring about themselves. Or if they ask about you, it's because they're trying to extract information that then they can use against you. So you don't want to hang out with people like that. If you feel like you have to justify and prove yourself to someone who's just not appreciating who you are and what you have to offer, that's a toxic relationship. And you want to get that kind of stuff out of your life and retrain your inner dialogue, you know. So every time I'm a bother comes up, you know, you want to rephrase that with, I have so much love and generosity to offer people. I have so much this, that, or the other, whatever specific things you know are the gifts that you offer other people, you know, who you are, those values that you bring to other people's lives, you know, and what you want to do. Like, that's what you want to replace that with. Like, I am this and that, you know, that's just their perception of me. That's just their perception of me. And if you keep allowing that perception to affect you, if you hang out with them, you're going to allow that perception to keep affecting you, because you're just going to constantly be hearing it. And the more that you hear it, the more you're going to believe it, which is why you need to get that stuff out of your life so that you don't believe that. And then you retrain your brain, retrain your inner dialogue to override that, because your inner dialogue is a constant inventory of your belief systems, right? So if you believe that you're a bother, if you believe that no one gets you, then your inner dialogue is running programs that's constantly reinforcing that, right? And so it becomes like this negative feedback loop. So you want to stop that by canceling and deleting those old belief systems that come up in your thoughts and in other people's words in your inner dialogue, and rewrite that with something positive. You know, I have so much love and generosity to offer, and right now I need to focus that most on me so I can get better. I have so much this and that to offer, and right now I really need to turn that inward so that I can help myself to do this, so that I have so much more to offer other people, you know, because if you just give and give and give yourself away, and you're totally drained and exhausted, then you can't help other people who need your help. And maybe you feel like you're here to serve. Like, maybe your soul genuinely wants to serve people, either through your family or your community or organization or globally. And that's great. And maybe right now is just like, it's just your healing time. Like, you're in the cocoon and you need to be focused mostly on you. And once this is taken care of, now you can come back out into your family or your community and organization or the world and share what it is that you want to share, because you have that balance met, you know. And right now is just the time that you need to develop that balance, which means focus needs to be on you, on taking care of you. So don't feel guilty about that. I'm going to see if I missed anything here. Okay. Anything else that you guys have? Any other questions? I have another situation. If no one else has a question, I can turn on audio for efficiency. Okay, let me unmute you. Okay, go ahead. You are unmuted now.
And you can hear me?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. So this is an in-person support group for children, let's say adult children of childhood abuse. And I went to one meeting of it like 6 months ago. It was my first meeting, where another member had seen me at another group meeting, not support group, just a social group, like a meetup. And she came up to me right away and lambasted me and just said, you know, you are not to acknowledge me in public. And just the way she talked to me was clearly she was afraid and triggered, and like, I'm like, of course I wouldn't. This is a support group. We're not supposed to, you know, like, I know how support groups work. But then she proceeded, and I was like, wait, this is not an average comment. This is feeling narky now. Then I don't remember what she next said, but it bothered me so much. I felt so marginalized and shut down. During a break at the meeting, I said, listen, I need you probably to not interact with me, because I'm of the way that she's talking with me. She kept talking over me, and then she said, I can tell this is really hard for you to express your feelings. And I said, see that? That's what you're doing. Don't tell me what I'm feeling. You don't know me. Stop talking. And she just kept trying to tell me. she obviously has psychic ability, and I do too, but she had more of it than I did. And I hated it. So I went to that same support group yesterday for the first time in all these months. And because I really want in-person help and support. And she's there again. She did the same thing as she did last time at the end, which is not interacting with me, but then avoiding all eye contact with me, and intentionally, it seems, walking up to people that I was talking with and putting her hands on them and interrupting our conversation by, you know, it's manipulation.
Triangulation. Yeah.
It's clear to me.
Yeah.
So I really want to go to this group, and nobody else can see it. The leader is actually like, she gave a TED talk, so she's like really prominent kind of leader, but this is a different, sorry for the tangle. She was there yesterday. The same main leader was not there 6 months ago. So this main leader did not see the incident 6 months ago. And so it's my first time meeting the main leader yesterday. And she's a very, how do I describe it? Very smiley, kind of soft, extra affirming person.
Mm-hmm.
Did not strike me as somebody who was actually attending to the deeper things in the room, like what I was seeing and picking up on. Like she didn't seem so strong on, she's following the official rules of boundaries that are on the paper, but she wasn't
perceiving.
Right. Yeah, perceiving, right. So then I feel like, great, I don't want to be re-traumatized by going to her like I went to my mom, and then I report what's happening and I just get blown off because nobody can see it.
Yeah.
I've been through that trauma so many times. I can't take it again.
Yeah, it is incredibly invalidating.
Yeah, I don't know how to win against a character like this.
Right.
I always lose against characters like this because I don't know how to play the game. And just tell me what you think of how to do it. I want to go to this meeting. I don't want to deny myself the support that I need because of one lousy person.
Right.
She can read me. She is reading me. It's hard for me to assert myself. And going up to her again to say something will not work. She will do bullshit.
Yeah.
You know it. You know she's going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
or,
totally.
I can totally predict her lousy face doing just that. And I can't take that either. I will punch her. I will. I'm not violent, but that kind of behavior throws me on the edge of, you know, that's why I was telling her to stop, because I was shaking. I was so angry when she was talking, 6 months ago. So that's the scene.
Right. Yeah, they will always gaslight you. They're never going to own up to what they did. So like you said, don't even go there with her. If you can go to this meeting, I mean, like you said, it's about you, right? And so like you want to feel the support. You don't want to feel like you've been run out because of this toxic person. If you can go to that meeting and have healthy enough boundaries where it's like that woman's not even there, like you're not even giving her the time of day. And also where you don't necessarily try to convince anybody else. Because remember, this is what happens predictably. You realize that the narc is a narc, and then you try to tell somebody else, and everybody else is clueless because they didn't have the same interaction you had, or they were looking from a different point of view and they didn't know all of the preceding things that went up to that, and they didn't read into that backhanded, put down that on the surface had plausible deniability, but damn well what that meant, and just that nobody else did. And then you feel devastated because you feel so alone, so invalidated. Then you start to question your sanity. Are you crazy that you're the only one seeing this? I have been in that situation so many times too. And I know like how desperately you want other people to see it and acknowledge it. And sometimes it's not going to happen. Sometimes other people are just clueless. And sometimes there are other abusers who like the fact that somebody else is abusing you. So that's where you want to be really cautious. Maybe this is like people just don't realize, and it's okay. And you can manage your boundaries with this person and still have a healthy dynamic here. But if it gets to the point where you don't feel like that's healthy, where if you feel like other people are condoning her abusing you, then you got to get out of there, and find a different support group that doesn't have so much toxicity, so this is a boundary test for you, to see, and you just gotta like give yourself the validation, instead of like, because if no one validates you and recognize it's a possibility, that no one will ever validate what's happening with this woman, that no one will ever realize who she is or what she's doing to you or to anybody else, and that's okay, because that's their deal. It's not about you, and you can't convince them, because you'll end up looking like you're crazy, or you'll end up looking like an abusive person, or you'll end up looking like something that's not the reality of the situation, and you'll feel worse about yourself, or everyone, will convince you that it didn't happen, So try to own your boundaries. Try to approach that where, you're having no contact with this person, like you're not even giving her the time of day, but you're focused on everything else. If you can manage that, if it feels healthy and it feels like you're still getting something positive out of that, then that's great. But if it doesn't, then you got to recognize, inside yourself that feeling like this just doesn't feel good. It's more harm than good, and that's your call.
Okay, so I have Stockholm syndrome with my with my narcissistic mother, and this person triggers me of that, being female and behaving that way. And so there are two ways that I dealt with it yesterday when I went to the meeting, which is one, avoiding eye contact with her because I could feel her, the way that she looks at me, it's like penetrate, like it levels me.
Yeah.
And I'm scared. My heart beats fast. But the other way was extra listening to her when she would share, it's a circle when she shared, and in my mind, like, oh, she's so smart, or she's so this, or she was dressed really elegantly. Like it's my Stockholms, it's my trauma coming up of how can I be safe around this person? Well, if I can't beat them, then maybe I can be non-threatening to them, and somehow they'll not bully me anymore. Well, that didn't work either, because she still did the same thing after the meeting and interrupted a conversation I was in by putting her hands on somebody I was talking to.
Right.
So I say this context because now you know what I've tried. And for the next meeting, what I was thinking about doing is they want a 15-minute presenter to pick a topic. And the topic is like rad. It is how we are going to something like claim our power with the one who triggers us. And so I was gonna volunteer. I haven't volunteered yet, but I was like, damn, this is awesome. I can actually loop in my narcissistic mother and this woman into the same bucket in my speech, and I thought my opening line will be staring right at her, and I'll say, if you're trying to tear me down, you're already below me because you're trying to take me down to your level. And as if that's just part of my speech, looking at her and then looking at the next person to say, this has been something that I've realized in my healing process that helps me be different with those who trigger me, to recognize it's not me, it's their inadequacy. Do you think that's too aggressive? And that's
here's the thing. I know it's gonna feel sweet to say that, right? But here's the thing, like you're probably gonna trigger a narcissistic injury. Which means like that woman is going to be fuming, and then she's going to be all on you, so like, I know it's like, because the ego really wants to like say something like that. And like, it's almost like passive aggression. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, it's saying it to her. So expect that if you do that, you're going to get a retaliation, and it's going to be a lot worse. Like, it's not going to go well. Like, that's the only thing. And if you really feel like you need to say that to stand up for yourself, then say that, but know that you need to be real, vigilant after that, because she is going to try to hurt you more after that, and so just be very mindful, of what is standing up, and speaking your truth, and what is a passive aggressive attack that, or even something that could appear to be an attack, and then, bring on a much worse retaliation.
Okay. So then, because I've lived in extremes, which is I'm completely quiet, or I just,
yeah.
I don't actually know what middle looks like at all about anything in life. Hypersexual, hyposexual. I don't know middle on any level. So, I feel like if I just pretend like nothing has happened and don't give her eye contact, I'm the same little girl who let abuse happen, and I'm participating in the denial.
Right.
So I don't actually know how to be different than I've been in my past.
Okay. So I think what you're saying is that you feel like you have to stand up and speak your truth somehow, right? But maybe without staring right at her, right? Or something like that, where you can stand up and own your truth, because for you, that sounds like something important, right? And that's you saying, like, when this happens, I know that's the reality, and I know that I don't need to react in this way anymore, and that I can react in this way. And not everyone is going to see or notice or understand, and that's okay. I have to validate myself. And so that, you know, if you're coming from a place of empowerment, which is like, I'm not a victim, right? Like, this happens and it happened to me, and this is how I see it now. This is how I'm taking my power back. I'm speaking up, I'm standing up, and this is the new action that I'm taking. I validate me. I no longer need someone else to validate me. That's you owning your power. That comes from a place of empowerment versus like a place of blame, you know? And like you're saying, like the middle path, like you're still trying to find that, you know, because like I was telling you earlier, right, from Buddhism, where they say, like, if you're at one extreme, like you don't know where the middle path is, so you go to the other extreme, and then somehow you start to feel out the middle path is somewhere in here, or you want to be like somewhere in here versus like at one end or the other. And sometimes, you know, you have to act out this whole back and forth drama until you figure out where that middle path is. And so many of us, I mean, that is the PTSD that you're talking about, where you're quiet and subdued, and something happens, and maybe you stuff it down, and then all of a sudden you just like explode, right? Like, and it was like, maybe it wasn't even like a huge thing, but it was like all these things, you know, coming together at that point. And so finding a way to like stand up and speak out and speak your truth in some sort of middle path, that's what you're working on right now, you know. And that's you knowing that you don't want to stuff it down. And that's you also knowing that you don't want to come out on a full-on attack or explosion, that you want to find some kind of healthy, empowered way to stand up and express your truth. Does that make sense?
And that's what I want to do. I just feel deer in the headlights. I have absolutely no clue. I'm very linear and binary. So, you know, if she comes up and interrupts a conversation again by touching the person who's in front of me, being direct is going to cause her injury. Then she's going to reach out at me. I don't know how to function. I will admit I have like really poor social functioning because I was so isolated growing up.
Right.
So there's also that. Like, I don't know how to handle the minimalist, most confrontations and basic differences in human behavior. I don't know how to deal with it.
Most of us who grew up in these households as adults, we all say like how socially awkward, right? It feels sometimes. And like you're saying, like not knowing how to handle situations. So when I was teaching high school, I took this one course from this guy who taught us how to deal with difficult students. And what I found was that wasn't just valuable for like teaching and dealing with teenagers who are smart asses. Like, this was an excellent tool for dealing with problematic people in general. And so say she comes up, say you're having a conversation with someone again, and she comes up and maybe like touches the person and like puts her back to you and somehow weasels her way. Yeah. And, you know, that's interesting, you know, just something like that. Like, wow, that's interesting. What's interesting? It's just so interesting how you just inserted yourself like that in between us, as if we weren't standing here having a conversation.
Nice.
Right? And just, I mean, it's not anger, it's fact. It's like, wow, that's so interesting. I wonder why you would do that. Right? And then the other person is kind of like, yeah, that was a little weird, wasn't it? You know?
Yeah. Okay, so slowing it down for me.
Breathe, right? Like breathe 3 times before you react, because your immediate reaction is going to be that old stuff, right? Yeah. So, right, like sometimes you just need to exhale first before you inhale, because you're like, right, when it happens. So exhale, take 3 deep breaths. And then just something diffusing, like, well, that's interesting, because then you're making it about her. Like, that's so interesting that you would do that. I wonder why you would do that, you know, because now it's all about her. It's not about you. You're not defensive. You're not like, you did that to me. You're just like, it's so interesting that you would do that. I wonder why.
I love it. That gives me enough of a template, you know, like a flavor that I can say, okay, that kind of thing. And I can apply it to the different scenarios that.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes people will, like, they'll just, no shame, you know, and they'll just go and go. And if they're just insisting and they're just rude and insisting, then the best way to diffuse that is just to go, that's a possibility. And then just be done with it and walk away, you know, or could be, and walk away. Any of these sort of like, that's interesting, could be, that's a possibility, you know? And so it's not like, you're not triggering their anger, you're not triggering a defense, you're not triggering an injury, because you're kind of being positive. You're like, that's interesting, could be, that's a possibility, right? So there's nothing inherently negative in that, but it's also just diffusing of whatever is happening. And like I tell you, it works like a charm. Like when I would deal with the teenagers, and then when I do this now with adults who are difficult, it really diffuses situations. And the whole key is just taking those 3 deep breaths and coming to that from a very neutral standpoint versus any kind of emotional charge, because they'll feel the emotional charge.
Yeah. So I have to be mindful. I can't just use the words that you offered and then inside be like, you know what I mean? I can't be like,
right,
could be, with a big middle finger. I don't, that's my next job then, before I even go into that meeting, to calm myself down so much. I don't know how. That would be like a personality transformation for me to be able to not be emotional inside.
It does happen. It'll happen, and it just takes time. Like I used to feel like that, even if it was like on social media, if someone would attack me, and I notice it in my body, and it happens right here in my chest, and it's like, right, and it's like is getting ready to like go fight, and I'm like, whoa, calm that down, right? So like, and that's just the old like defense, you know, like that survival mechanism that you learn growing up. It was like all the anxiety would start, and you know, how do you react and deal with that, right? And so now as an adult, like you can override that. And now people do this kind of thing, or I'm just like, oh, okay. And it's almost like kind of funny because it doesn't stick, and it doesn't trigger that anxiety reaction anymore. Where like, I can't even speak because my mouth just suddenly goes numb, and like, you know, the words aren't coming out, or all that's coming out is anger, or like not what I want to say. So, you know, breathe. And like you said, mindfulness, right? That is the practice to learn to deal with those situations so that it stops triggering the old stuff, you know, and it no longer has anywhere to stick to you. Where like, you can see that as outside you, and that doesn't have anything to do with you. That's interesting. Huh. I wonder why you would do that, you know, and it's not about you anymore. And you realize more and more as you deal with people that like, when they treat you like that, it's not about you. It's not about you at all. That's all about them, you know, and you just happen to be the target, the nearest target, you know, that they're attacking.
I love it. I'm so there. I actually have been breathing and listening to this. I'm filling up on my side. I got it. I got the download. Thank you so much.
Awesome. You're welcome. Awesome. I'm gonna, if that's it, I'll mute your microphone so the background noise doesn't get in.
Yes.
Okay. So does anybody else have any more questions for now? If you have a question, let me know, and then I'll just wait for you to type it in, or I can turn on your speaker. If there's no other questions for right now, then I will wrap this up, and I will be back here at 6 p.m. Pacific USA time in about 4.5 hours. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. All right. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for coming.